Welcome to class today, geometry students, on this Monday the 28th. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you had a good weekend. Hope you guys are ready to learn some math. I do believe congratulations is in order for Jason and the volleyball team, so congratulations to you guys for winning the state championship. Very proud of you guys. I know you had other than one senior. I know you guys had a very young team, so congratulations to you guys. And I'm really glad that y'all did well and won the whole thing. That's really impressive. So congratulations to you guys and to Coach Ware. Moving on to some announcements here. As you can see in front of you, we will have a quiz tomorrow. Now please don't freak out over that. I will, at the end of this hour, go over what will be on the quiz tomorrow. And so do understand I will help you there. And by the way, tomorrow we're only going to go over the test and take a quiz. There'll be no notes tomorrow, no homework tomorrow, so you can kind of look forward to that, okay? Not really a day off, but a day off from learning new material. You do owe me Friday's homework, so please turn that in now at this time. I am not going to take time and write that down, but I'll read it to you. Let me quickly get a drink of water here. Friday's homework that you were supposed to do over the weekend, and some of you turned it in, by the way, already, was page 254, numbers 10 through 22 all, 24 through 30 all, and then 34 and 35. So please turn that in now if you've not turned it in already. And then tomorrow, I know I'm well aware, excuse me for stuttering there, I'm well aware of the fact that I told you we would go over your quiz or your test today, but the reason I chose to do it tomorrow, there'll be a lot more time in tomorrow's class period, since the quiz will not take the entire hour. And we do have some notes to cover today. I just feel like it'd be a lot easier to go over your test tomorrow. And by the way, if you're like, well, Mr. Earhart, I really want to see how I did, like Jay said, you took yours late and one of you did a retake, well, then look at Sycamore, because whenever you come into school on Monday morning, those grades will always be updated, okay? So you can go to Sycamore and see exactly what you got on the quiz if you retook it or if you did a makeup quiz or a makeup test like Jasa did, okay? So there's the announcements for today. Please call me or email me if you have any questions. Let's go ahead and get started. Now remember, students, Chapter 5 is all about triangles, okay? We're going to be looking a lot at triangles. So far, we have learned 4 ways, and we're going to review those in just a couple minutes. But so far we have learned 4 ways to show that 2 triangles, and that should be an S right there, 2 triangles are congruent. Okay? We have learned 4 ways, and we're going to review those in just a minute. We have one more way to learn, and that's what we're going to do today, is we're going to learn that last way to prove that 2 triangles are congruent. But before we do that, let's do a little review, okay? So you can take some notes, or you can just kind of watch, whatever you would like to do. So however you feel that you review well, that's fine. You can watch or you can take some notes here. Okay, now let's say I've got a triangle like this, and let's go ahead and slide it over like this. And I think it'd be good to turn it a little bit to make it just a little more difficult. And let's just quickly call it triangles ABC and DEF, okay? And now let's say I marked this angle congruent to this angle, and this angle here congruent to this angle here. And then angle C congruent to angle D. There, again, you can take notes or just watch, whatever is easiest for you. One thing we learned how to do was write a triangle congruent statement. And so if I ask you to write a triangle congruence statement, you would write this. Triangle, now I don't care if you put ABC, ACB, BAC, BCA, CBA, CAB. It doesn't matter, okay? But the second triangle does matter, because when you write the triangle over here, in this blank right here, you've got to make sure that corresponding angles line up with corresponding angles. So notice angle A came first, and A has 1 mark. So over here, angle E has 1 mark, so I must put angle E first. Notice my second letter is B. Notice B has 2 marks. So the letter I put over here second has to be letter F, because letter F has 2 marks. And then lastly, angle C has 3 marks, and over in this triangle, angle D has 3 marks, and so there we go. So on the quiz, well, let's talk about the quiz at the end of the hour. But one thing we did learn in lesson 5.1 is how to write a triangle congruent statement. Okay, so I hope that looks familiar. Now, something else that we learned how to do is I told you to list out congruent parts. For example, angles. You would write angle A is congruent to angle E. If I asked you to list out the congruent angles, angle B is congruent to angle F, and angle C is congruent to angle D. Now let's talk about the sides. Okay? The sides. Well, let's start off with side AB. No certain reason, I just feel like it. So AB is congruent to, now look at AB. Notice AB has 1 slash here and 2 slashes here. Do you see that? So let's look at the side over here that has 1 slash and 2 slashes. Here it is. So AB lines up with side FE or EF. Okay, now let's go to BC next. No certain reason, I'm just choosing side BC. Side BC is congruent to, let's see, BC has 2 slash marks at one end and 3 slash marks at the other end. So I'm going to come over here and I'm looking for 2 and 3. Here it is. Side DF has 2 slashes here and 3 slashes here. So I understand that BC corresponds with side DF. And then lastly, my last side over here is AC. And AC would be congruent to, let's see, AC has 1 slash and 3 slashes. And so AC would be congruent to DE, 1 slash and 3 slash. So DE. So that's something we did learn how to do. Hopefully you remember that. That should look pretty familiar. After that, in the next 2 lessons, we learned 4 ways to prove that triangles are congruent. And here they are in front of you. You don't have to turn to page 258. I'm just telling you, if you want to make notes in your notes, if you want to make a note in your notes, there's a really nice chart on page 258 that breaks all of this down for you. And right here I deleted, you can see it right here if I move this up. I deleted the last one because we're going to learn that later on today. But here's what we've learned so far. We've learned that when 3 sides of one triangle are congruent to 3 sides in another triangle, then those 2 triangles are congruent. And we've learned that when a side and an included angle and a side angle side of one triangle is congruent to side angle side of another triangle, then the 2 triangles are congruent. We've learned that when we have an angle, then a side, then an angle. So an angle, then a side, then an angle is congruent to an angle, side, angle. Then the 2 triangles are congruent. And we've learned that when we have an angle, angle, side of one triangle, angle, angle, side, angle, angle, side, congruent to angle, angle, side, then we definitely know that the 2 triangles are congruent. Okay, so that's what we've learned so far in this chapter, and that's really what you should be pretty good at and you should be pretty confident with at this point in time. Okay, okay, moving on. Let's take a look now. Let me see what's next here. Okay, yeah, now for the last way to show that 2 triangles are congruent. Okay, so here we go. Grab your notebooks, grab your pencils, and let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's continue on. The last way to show that 2 triangles are congruent. Go ahead and copy this in your notes if you would, please. We're going to prove triangles congruent by HL, and that stands for hypotenuse leg, okay? You do not need to write that down right now if you don't want to. That's up to you. But proving triangles congruent by HL. The lesson number is 5.4, and the date today is the 28th, if you care to write that down. 10/28/13. All right, proving triangles congruent by HL. This is the 5th way that we have learned to show that 2 triangles are congruent. And the date, sorry guys, I'm going to be drinking a lot of water today during the video. My throat is bothering me. And the date today is the 28th. So if there's a pause during the video, I'm just going to be getting some water. Okay? All right, so let's continue on. Now, would you please listen to me carefully? Please listen to me carefully. The first 4 ways, I would not write this down. Just listen to me. The first 4 ways that we learned to show triangles congruent, there should be an R right there. I guess I was having a rough spelling day. The first 4 ways that we learned to show triangles congruent worked on any type of triangle. Okay? Any type of triangle. The method we are going to learn today only works on a right triangle. And even though obviously I have no idea how to spell, I do need you to understand what I just said, okay? Those 4 ways that we learned last week worked on any triangle. The method we are going to learn today only works on a right triangle, or when you have 2 right triangles and you're proving them to be congruent. Do not use the HL method on any triangles except right triangles. Did you get that? Now, I would write that down somewhere in your notes. HL only works on right triangles. So please make note of that, and please do not forget that, or you're going to use it at the wrong time. Okay? Now let's continue on. Again, I go fast. You can pause the video when you need to. Now please copy this in your notes. Theorem 5.2 is called the Hypotenuse Leg Theorem. Here it is. Are you ready? If the hypotenuse and a leg of a right triangle are congruent to the hypotenuse and a leg of a second right triangle, then the 2 right triangles are congruent. Okay? So I'd like you to take some notes in your notes. Draw a right triangle, and then draw another right triangle, hopefully better than that one there. I like to turn mine around just to make you guys think a little bit. We're going to call this triangle GHI, and we'll call this triangle JKL. Now, go ahead and put a right angle symbol here. And if you didn't turn your triangle like mine, that's totally fine. Don't worry about that. It's not a big deal. And draw a right angle here. Now, I'm going to mark my hypotenuse congruent to my hypotenuse, and one of my legs congruent to one of my legs. Okay? Now, would you please watch this carefully? If the hypotenuse and leg of a right triangle are congruent to the hypotenuse and leg of a second right triangle, then the 2 triangles are congruent. Well, look, this hypotenuse here has 1 slash. This hypotenuse here has 1 slash. Let me back up. I made a mistake. First of all, notice you have to have a right triangle. Notice this is a right triangle, and notice this is a right triangle. Does everybody see that? Okay, that's the first thing you have to notice. Next, notice my hypotenuse here is congruent to my hypotenuse here. And notice that my leg here is congruent to my leg here. Well, then we know for sure, based on this theorem, that these 2 triangles are congruent. We do? Well, sure we do, definitely. We have a hypotenuse and a leg of a right triangle congruent to a hypotenuse and a leg of a second triangle. So when that happens, then we know the 2 right triangles are congruent. Okay? So that's all that you need is HL. Okay, if it's 2 right triangles, all that you need is HL of one triangle congruent to HL of another triangle. And if that happens, then we're all set. Okay? All right. So that's what we're going to learn today, and that's what we're going to use now for the rest of this class period. So here we go. Let's go ahead and practice this and see if we can't do some problems involving this, okay? But again, for the 3rd or 4th time, when you have a right triangle and a right triangle, and the hypotenuses, if there is such a word, are congruent, and the legs are congruent, then the 2 triangles are congruent. Okay, if you would please go ahead and copy this problem in your notes while I'm talking. is it possible to show that triangle JGH, the triangle here with the 1 in it, is congruent to triangle, I'm not sure why I put DEF. I could have typed that from another part, but that should be, and I apologize very profusely, guys. Let's see. Triangle JGH is congruent to triangle HKJ. So please make this HKJ. HKJ. Sorry about that. But anyways, is it possible to show that triangle JGH is congruent to triangle HKJ by using the HL congruence theorem, the theorem we just learned? So is triangle 1 congruent to triangle 2? Can we use HL? Well, first of all, and I know I probably annoy you guys, but I'm just not going to stop doing it. The first thing I'm always going to try to do is trace over the triangles and split them up. To me, I just feel like that's the best way to do these types of problems. And so that's what I'm going to do. Whenever two triangles overlap or share a side or whatever, I'm always going to try to pull those two triangles apart. I think that's definitely the best way to do it. So we have JKH and we have JHG. Now let's quickly mark what we know. There's a slash up here, so I'll put a slash here. There's a slash right here, so I'll put a slash here. And this is a right angle, and this is a right angle. Now, I would like to show you something. We know for sure that JH is congruent to JH because they're the same side here. Do you see that? They share that side. So we know this length here has to be the same as this length here. So JH is congruent to JH. Now let's see what we have. Can I use HL? Well, in order for me to have HL, I need three things. First of all, I need right triangles. Yep, I've got a right triangle and I've got a right triangle. Number two, I need the hypotenuses, if there is such a word, to be congruent. Well, here's my hypotenuse here, two slashes. Here's my hypotenuse here. And it has two slashes, so far so good. So number one, I have two right triangles. Number two, the hypotenuse is congruent to the hypotenuse. And lastly, one of my legs has to be congruent to one of my legs. And I have that here and here. So yes, because I have two right triangles, because the hypotenuse here is congruent to the hypotenuse here, and because one leg is congruent to one leg, yes, you can definitely state that these two triangles right here are congruent by the what method? The HL method. Definitely, definitely, definitely. Okay, let's go on and try another problem. Grab your notebooks here and let's keep taking some notes. All right, we're going to do a two-column proof, and I think, yeah, we skipped one. A two-column proof and another two-column proof. I know you don't like these. No students do, but we're going to do them, and then we'll be finished with our notes today. So here we go. Go ahead and copy this in your notes if you would, please, and then we'll get started. Now, while you are copying this into your notes, the given, the proof, and the diagram, I'm going to kind of ramble, and you might have to pause the video if I go too fast. But first of all, I notice in my picture here that I have connected triangles, and for me, students, that's just not going to cut it. So I'm going to separate these two triangles right now, just like that. And I'm going to pull this down here, and that's just me. Okay, so I'm kind of doing that now while you're copying the problem down, and hopefully you will do the same thing if it helps you. If it doesn't, that's fine, then don't do that. But for me, it's a big help. So PQR, and then PRS. Okay, and then notice in the diagram here, well, actually I'm not going to worry about what the diagram has because we're going to take our given and put it on the picture in just a second. So I split the two triangles. That's what I like to do. That's just Mr. Earhart. Okay, now what I've taught you to do is this. In two-column proofs, I've told you to go ahead and put the word statements. I'm not going to try to be neat, you understand that, and reasons. Excuse me. Statements and reasons. All right, now next I've taught you to pick up your given and put it on your diagram. So we know that PR is perpendicular to SQ. So PR is perpendicular to SQ. So I know right here I've got a perpendicular line symbol, and right here. Okay, all right, let's continue on. Now we know that PQ right here slash is congruent to PS right here, slash. So does everybody see what I did? Listen, on a test or a quiz, I'm not going to give you a lot of these proofs at all, but everyone can pick up the given and put it on the diagram. And then everyone can write their given right here and put the word given right over here. Those are 2 or 3 steps everyone can do to get partial credit. If you're not willing to do that, then that really is your own fault, okay? Anyone can do that. So pick up your given and put it on the diagram. Next, we go ahead and we come down to the very end. We know our last step is going to be to state that triangle PRQ is congruent to triangle PRS. We know that's going to be our last step, right? We know that. Now, we know we're going to have to use one of these methods. Side, 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 angle, angle, or angle, angle, side, or hypotenuse leg, right? I mean, that's the 5 ways we've learned to prove that 2 triangles are congruent. So if our last step is going to be to state that triangle PRQ is congruent to triangle PRS, then it's got to be one of these reasons, okay? Now let's go back up here. I've always taught you to put your given first. So PR is perpendicular to SQ. And I'm sorry, my pen is freezing up just a little bit. SQ, all right? Then you can put a comma if you want to. That's totally fine. And then PQ is congruent to PS, all right? And your reason for writing those 2 statements is it was given to you. They gave you that to work with. Okay, let me grab a drink of water here. Students, don't give up on the 2-column proofs. You can do this. Learn, practice, learn, practice. Okay, watch. We can do this. Now, think about what you have so far. Look at the picture. Let the picture help you. Notice we have, first of all, right triangles. Now, I know we've not stated that yet, but we do have right triangles, and we're going to state that in just a little bit. But we know we have right angles here. How do I know that? Because of this right here. PR is perpendicular to SQ. So I know eventually I'm going to state I have a right triangle. And notice that your hypotenuse is congruent to your hypotenuse. Do you see that? Well, look. Do you see this leg right here, PR? Isn't PR congruent to PR? Weren't those 2 sides the same? I mean, were not these 2 triangles connected like that? I know they don't look like it now because I've split them apart and I messed it up a little bit. It doesn't look perfect, but you know what I'm saying. We know that PR is congruent to PR. So it looks like to me that I can somehow state hypotenuse leg in the very end if I'm careful. Now look what just watch. Look what I have so far. I already have PQ is congruent to PS. Okay. Now if I'm going to use HL, I need 3 things. I need to state somewhere in my proof that I have what? Right triangles. And I need to state somewhere in my proof that my hypotenuses are what? Congruent. And there's somewhere in my proof I need to state that my legs are congruent. Well, look, you've already done number 2. Cross it off your list right here. What did you state right here? Say it with me. PQ is congruent to PS. And isn't PQ and PS, aren't they the hypotenuse of their triangles? Yes. So we've already stated that the hypotenuses are congruent. Now, let's continue on. How about if we state this? We cannot state that we have right triangles. We can't? No, we can't. Not until we state that we have right angles. Now, I like to use numbers, so I'm going to put angle 1. Well, don't circle it. And angle 2. Now, look what I state here. I'm going to say angle 1 or angle 1, angle 2 are right angles. So I put triangle, are right angles. Okay? Now, you've got to give me a reason. It's got to be a postulate, theorem, definition, corollary. Well, I can think of a theorem that we have. Remember this theorem that we had? Perpendicular lines, do you remember it? Form, what do they form? 4 right angles. Now, on a test or a quiz, if you just put perpendicular lines form right angles, that's fine. Or if you just put for your reason right here, perpendicular lines, that's good enough for me. As long as I know that you know why these 2 angles are right angles, I'm good with that, okay? So your reasons can be off a little, and I'll still give you credit. So angles 1 and 2 are right angles, reason being they're perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines form 4 right angles. Now, what did you just state here? You just stated that angles 1 and 2 are what type of angles? Right angles. So now that you've stated that, you can definitely state that triangle PRQ and triangle PRS are what type of triangles? Sorry about that. Right. Can you not state they're right triangles? What would your reason be? Remember, you have to use definitions, postulates, corollaries, theorems. How about the definition? Students, what's the definition of a right triangle? The definition of a right triangle is a triangle that has one right angle. And what did you just state right here in number 2? Did you not state that angles 1 and 2 are right angles? Sure you did. So if you've stated you have a right angle here, which you did, and if you've stated you have a right angle here, which you did, then you can definitely now state that you have right triangles. To me, that's totally, that's just kind of common sense just falling into place here. Okay, so look what we had to do up here. Remember, we had to state that we had right triangles. We had to state that the hypotenuse was congruent. We had to state that the legs were congruent. We already know that we've stated the hypotenuses were congruent. Now we've stated we have a right triangle. The only thing left you have to state is that the legs are congruent. That's it. And can we not state that right here? I definitely can. Look at this leg right here. PR is congruent to PR, and that's a leg. I can state that PR is congruent to PR. Definitely. And what's the reason? Do you remember whenever you say, A is congruent to A or 2 is congruent to 2, remember what it's called? It's called the reflexive property. You've got to know that. We're going to use that a lot this year. It's called the reflexive property. Now, I'm going to circle all 3 things that you've stated that you needed to state. I'm going to change color. Are you ready? You had to state that we had right triangles. You did it right here. We had to state that the hypotenuse was congruent to the hypotenuse. You did it right here. This is a hypotenuse and this is a hypotenuse. You had to state that 2 legs were congruent. You did it right here. Leg of one triangle, leg of the other triangle. So you've stated all those things, so now you can go ahead and say, step 5, triangle PRQ is congruent to triangle PRS. And the reason that you're allowed to write that is not this, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, it's HL, hypotenuse leg. That is the reason that you can state that these 2 triangles are congruent. In order to use HL, you need 3 things. 2 right triangles, a hypotenuse congruent to a hypotenuse, and a leg congruent to a leg. Okay? And that's it. So we're good. This is not easy. I'm not saying it is easy. I'm saying this. Are you ready? I'm saying A, don't get discouraged. B, I'm not going to bury you on a test or a quiz. I will be kind. I will be reasonable. Okay? I will be. But at least everyone in this room, when we have these on tests and quizzes, everyone in the room has the ability to pick up their given and mark it over here. And then take your given and write it here and put the word given. And then pick up your proof and put it down here. At least get partial credit, okay? And I will make sure that if you're doing your review sheet and you got your bonus points, you might miss some of these proofs, but you can still do well on the test and quizzes, okay? But I'd really love for you to learn how to do these. But if you're really struggling with these, you can still do well in the class, okay? All right, one more proof, and we're done for the day, and you can start working on your homework. We're going to go over the quiz real quick for tomorrow, and then you can start working on your homework, okay? Go ahead and copy this in your notes, if you would, please. Given triangle TSR is equiangular, given that triangle WVU is equilateral, and then given that ST is congruent to VW, prove that these 2 triangles are congruent, okay? So go ahead and copy this down, and let's jump into it right away. Now, you might need to pause the video unless you can write this down and listen at the same time. We know by now the first thing we do is we pick up our given and we mark it over here. I think they've done that for you already. TSR is equiangular, so notice I've marked all 3 of these angles congruent. And by the way, there's one more given I forgot to write down here. So let's write this real quick in our given. Angle S is congruent to angle V. Angle S is congruent to angle V. Okay, so TSR is equiangular. I've already marked all these angles congruent, so that's already done for you. Next, ST is congruent to VW. I already marked that for you. 1 mark here and 1 mark here, so that's already done. Next, WVU triangle is equilateral. That means all the sides are congruent. So notice I'll put a slash here, and a slash here. So that's all taken care of. And then notice angle S is congruent to angle V, and I've already marked that for you too. So step one, we pick up all of our given, we put them on the triangles. And then step two is to go ahead and write the words statements and reasons. And again, I'm not going for the handwriting award of the year, obviously. So we're going to write down statements and reasons. And then next, we're going to go ahead and put all of our given right here. So triangle TSR. And you can abbreviate. I have no problem. In fact, I'll tell you what I used to do. Let me go and tell you now, I used to allow my students, instead of copying all this over when it's really long like this, I allowed them just to put the word given right here, and then come over here and just write given for the reason. Now that's, a lot of teachers won't let you do that, but I'm fine with that, especially when it's a lot of stuff to write. So instead of copying all this down right here and putting it here, I'm just going to go ahead and put the word given. That means we'll look up here when we need to, and then over here we'll put the word given. Now I know at the very end, I'm not sure how many steps it's going to take, but at the very end I'm going to state triangle RST is congruent to triangle UVW. Now my reasons either going to be side, 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 angle, 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 side, or hypotenuse leg. But, you know, are we dealing with two right triangles here? No, we are not. So we can just forget hypotenuse leg. That's impossible to use that. So we know it's going to be one of these four other reasons. Okay? All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, on a proof like this, students, and I'm not bragging, but I do know exactly how we're going to do this, but I want to go through the thought process that's going to take place with you, okay? So here we go. Sometimes it's good to brainstorm on problems like this, okay? So watch what I'm going to do here, okay? Well, I'm going to brainstorm real quick here. I'm trying to think to myself, probably side, side, side is the best way to prove that these two triangles are congruent. And let me show you how I know that. Are you ready? First of all, remember we have a theorem that says if we have an equal angular, we also have equilateral. So I know I can state the triangle RTS. I'm just brainstorming right now. I know that I can state that our triangle RTS is equilateral. I know I can state that because I have a theorem that says if a triangle is equiangular, it's equilateral. Now, once I state this equilateral, I know I can state then that all the sides are congruent. And so if all the sides are congruent, I know I can state that RT is congruent to TS is congruent to SR. Do you see that? Once I state that this triangle here is equilateral, then I know all three sides are congruent. So I could state that. Again, I'm just brainstorming right now. And by the way, in your given, let's go back a page. In your given, you were told that triangle WVU is equilateral. So if you're told that WVU is equilateral, you can also state that WV is congruent to VU, and that's congruent to UW because all three of these sides are congruent, okay? So I can state that too. Now, watch this next cool thing here in your given. In your given, we are told that ST is congruent to VW. That's in your given. Do you see it right here? ST is congruent to VW. Do you see that? So let's come back over here and let's brainstorm. For this VW right here, I can now substitute, let's go back and look at it again, ST congruent to VW, okay? So for VW right here, or WV, I can substitute ST. So in place of this, I could then put ST is congruent to VU, which is congruent to UW. Let me go over again what I did. I substituted ST for VW because in your given right here, you're told ST is congruent to VW. So I can make that substitution. So look what you just said. You just said that ST is congruent to VU right here and also to UW. Now that I've made that substitution, look at this, students. Look. See what ST is right here? CST. What is ST congruent to? SR right here. So I could also substitute SR in for ST. And I could say SR is congruent to VU, congruent to UW. And then look what else I could put for SR. RT is also congruent to SR. So for SR, I could put RT is congruent to, sorry, my pen's messing up, VU, congruent to, wow, it's really messing up. Sorry, guys. UW. Now, I think I've gone over. I'm going to go really fast. Okay, and if you don't finish this video in class, you finish it at home tonight. You do the homework tonight, guys. Sorry. That's how it is. Okay, tomorrow you have a day off. We're just doing a quiz, and we're just doing going over your test tomorrow. So you can handle a rough day today, okay? So anyways, so I've made some substitutions here, okay? And now that I've made those, I'm pretty sure I can state somewhere that ST is congruent to VW and RS. In fact, right here I can say RS is congruent to UV, and I can state that TR is congruent to UW. So I've brainstormed pretty well, and I think I can do this. So let's see if you can follow along. It's not going to be easy, but I think we can do this. Okay, so I'm going to write real small. Take some good notes. Okay, I'm given that TSR, I'm given that WUV is equilateral. So real quick, I'm going to state that WV is congruent to VU is congruent to UW. And how can I state that? Well, remember, I have an equilateral triangle, so the reason is definition of equilateral triangle, okay? You were given that right here in the given, equilateral triangle. Now, for number 3, watch what I put next. Watch carefully. Number 3, I'm going to say that triangle T, watch this, TSR, ooh, what is it up here? Look, guys, what is it? Equiangular, right? So I'm going to say it's what? Equilateral. How can I say that? We have a theorem that we learned, and the theorem is equiangular triangles are equilateral. We had a theorem. The theorem said all equilateral triangles are equiangular, and all equiangular triangles are equilateral. We had a theorem. That's why it's so important you've learned these down the year. I kept saying, learn these, learn these, learn these. So we can definitely state that TSR is equilateral. How can I state that? Because TSR is what? Equiangular. And if it's equiangular, it's also equilateral. Now, why in the world would I want to state that TSR is equilateral? Well, I'll tell you why. Because once you state that TSR is equilateral, you can then say that all of its sides are congruent to each other. You can say that TS is congruent to SR is congruent to RT. You can state all of that. And your reason would be, just like reason number 2, definition of equilateral triangle. Look, students, once you state you've got an equilateral triangle, you can state all of the sides are congruent. Now, would you please look at your given? And actually, to be honest with you, we might be able to use side angle side. I just noticed that we have this angle right here congruent to this angle right here. Do we not? Yeah, let's go side angle side. Look at this, students. We have this angle right here congruent to this angle here. That was given to us. That's in the given right here. I'm circling it for you. That's in your given right there. And also in your given, you were told what else? You were told this side here is congruent to this side here. Do you see that right here? That's in your given right there. So really, the only thing that's stopping me from using side angle side, all I have to do is state that RS is congruent to UV. That's all that I have to state. And I think I can do that pretty easily. Let's see. I can make a substitution, and here it is. Watch this so carefully, please. Watch number 5, okay? Look at your given. What is ST congruent to? VW. So you see ST right here? See it? For ST, I'm going to go ahead and put UW. So now I'm going to put UW is congruent to SR, congruent to RT. And what would my reason be for that? Substitution. You're allowed to substitute. Substitution property of congruence, okay? So where ST is, I substituted UW because of right here would be VW. I apologize, students. We all make mistakes. VW. Make that a VW. How can I make that substitution? Because right here, ST is congruent to VW. Now, somewhere we're trying to state that RS is congruent to UV. Somewhere we've got to state this side congruent to this side, so we have side angle side. So somehow I've got to get that. Well, look, students, RS is right here. What is right here? VW. What is VW congruent to? UV. It's right here. WV is congruent to VU. So what can you substitute for VW? For VW, you can substitute VU or UV. Same thing. So now I can state that UV, right here, let me find it for you. Right here, WV is congruent to VU. So where WV is, I can now substitute UV and then bring down my RS right here. So UV is congruent to RS. And of course, the reason for that would be substitution. All right? Substitution. And then lastly, look what I've stated. I stated in my given that one side is congruent to one side. I've stated that S is congruent to V, and I've stated that UV is congruent to RS, this side and this side. So now I'm ready to state that my two triangles are congruent. And the reason would be side, angle, side. Side, angle, side. There we go. Okay? I know I've not left a lot of time for you to go over your the quiz for tomorrow, but you know what, students, to be honest with you, it's really just going to be the basic thing we've talked about all along. I'll go really fast. And by the way, you probably have to finish this video at home. And I think that's one of the first times all year I've had you do that. So I'm not usually this long-winded, but it is what it is. But I'm going to give you triangles. I'm going to give you a bunch of triangles. Maybe something like this, and then a triangle that comes across like this with some markings on it. And I'm going to say, can you state that those two triangles are congruent? And you're going to say yes, or you're going to say no. And then if you say yes, I'm going to ask, what reason did you use? Side, 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 angle, side, angle, side, angle, 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 side, hypotenuse, leg. You're going to tell me what reason you can state that the two triangles are congruent. And sometimes you might say, no, you can't state that they're congruent. And that's pretty much going to be the whole quiz. Now, I am going to give you some triangles, and I am going to ask you to write a congruence statement. Okay, more than likely. I have not made the quiz. That's probably going to be on there. And then I'm also going to ask you to list out congruent angles and list out congruent sides of congruent triangles. Okay, now I'd like to cut you a little slack here. I can see I've been mega long-winded, so here's what I would like to do. Okay, I would like to say to you, here's your homework assignment, and what I would like to say is, if you don't want to do that tonight, you can wait until Tuesday night. That's fine, but remember, some of the hypotenuse leg problems will be on your quiz tomorrow. But if you would like to do this homework assignment Tuesday night, because remember, Tuesday night you will not have any homework, you are more than welcome to do that. I will not collect this assignment until Wednesday morning in class, okay? So that's up to you. So tonight, here's what you need to do. You need to study for your quiz, finish the video if you didn't finish it, study for the quiz, take the quiz tomorrow, we'll go over your test tomorrow, and then if you want to work on the homework tonight, you can. If you don't, you can work on it Tuesday night, and it will be due Wednesday morning, okay? If you got any questions or comments, please feel free to email me. Have a good day.